Oh,
no audio for David. There.
No audio?
Now you're good.
Thank you. Take two. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You have tuned into the Rebel News live stream on this, a Monday, November 18th, 2024. I'm David Menzies and my co-host. Well, let me tell you a bit about my co-host, shall I? Do you know, folks, today is National Princess Day. My co-host doesn't celebrate National Princess Day. You want to know why? She is no princess. She is the she-devil with a sword. She is the Khaleesi of Northern Alberta. She is Sheila Gunn Reid. How are you doing, my highness?
Oh, David, I'm doing great. I'm so sorry that I wasn't there on the weekend for your very exciting, I guess it was like a mutual support group on behalf of the entire company, which we'll get to in a little minute. But it's also Megyn Kelly's birthday for people who don't know. And
Happy
she shares
birthday, Megan.
Yeah, and she shares a birthday with both Mickey and Minnie Mouse. When you know what, they both share birthdays. So that's what's happening in the world of today. We have a very full show, and we've got lots of footage from over the weekend, and I'll let David explain what happened and why it happened and why people flew in from across the country and outside of the country, in the case of Yankee Pollock, to Toronto to stand with David Menzies. But I'll tell everybody what we're doing before we get into that. So this is the Rebel News live stream. It occurs on the first work day of the week. So usually on Monday, if there's a holiday, expect us on the Tuesday. And on the Friday, we talk about the news of the day, completely unscripted. And you know, sometimes it's stuff that we don't have time to do a video on or a news item on, but we still think it's important. And more than that, we want to hear from you in a couple of different ways. We want to hear from you with your money, but also with your comments and suggestions. So if you are watching us on the censorship platform of YouTube, I understand why you're there. YouTube it's kind of a convenient way to watch things. It's the world's second largest search engine, but you should know that it is a censorship platform that has completely demonetized Rebel News, along with hundreds, if not thousands, of other prominent conservative channels. It's their soft censorship by disincentivizing your presence there. So we remain there out of spite, and because there are 1.6 million sets of your eyeballs there, and if you want to watch us there, then we will be there. However, if you want to support a platform that believes in your human right to free speech and allows you to support us here at Rebel News through something called a Rumble Rant, head on over to Rumble. There, as I said, you can participate in the show by the same sort of live chat that you know and love over on YouTube. But since we're not allowed to have any sort of monetization over on YouTube, you can leave us something called a Rumble Rant. That's their paid chat. If it's over the $5 US cutoff, we're obligating ourselves to read it on air, but don't let that be the bar for entry, because we frequently make time to read the chats that fall below the $5 US cutoff. And we are grateful for you for supporting us at whatever price point is affordable and works for you, because I completely understand. Justin Trudeau is picking your pocket harder than ever. There's less money left in your pocket than ever before. It's an inflationary time, and we really appreciate the fact that you choose us. So that's it. David, tell the world why at extreme time and financial expense, everybody converged on, well, everybody with the exception of me, because somebody had to stay sort of on the outside in case everybody else ended up in jail. Why the entire company just about ended up in Toronto at a protest in support of David Menzies wearing hats.
Before I do, Sheila, we never cover sports here unless there's a political element, but let me take 1 minute to talk about the fun stuff, the toy department of life, the football season. Yesterday, the Toronto Argonauts, right here, folks, they won the Grey Cup against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, which I'm now going to call the Winnipeg Blue Bills, pay homage to the Buffalo Bills. Remember the Bills in the early 90s, folks? 4 Super Bowl appearances in a row and lost all 4. Same deal with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. It's kind of ironic, isn't it, Sheila? A city with the word win in it keeps losing it. But anyways, bomb that, Winnipeg. And in the NFL, my beloved Detroit Lions. Did you see that score, Sheila?
No, I didn't even watch the Grey Cup.
Shame on you. Well, you're an Elk supporter, so you're part of that woke CFL crew.
I refuse to use the improper grammar. It's elk.
I know.
Elk is the plural.
I still call them Eskimos. Political correctness be damned. But folks, the Lions took on the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's not a misprint. They beat them 52-6. I think the NFL has that, have a mercy rule. My idea, Sheila, I knew it was going to be a blowout. Not that big a blowout, but I think the next time the Jacksonville Jaguars come into Detroit, how about this? Don't field the teams. Go to the Detroit Zoo, get the lion out of the lion cage, the jaguar out of the jaguar cage, put them in a mutual cage. Let's see what happens. It'll be the same result as what happened on the field.
I would watch that. I would watch that before I watched the football, that's for sure.
You know what? Well, PETA would be very upset about that, but
even better. And
the only reason I'm mentioning this, folks, it's to carry on what Sheila was saying. I thought it was going to miss both games by being in the hoosgaw or a paddy wagon, and it did not come to fruition because, as astute viewers of Rebel News know, I was covering the pro-Israel and pro-Hamas dueling demonstration in the heart of the Jewish community for a 4th week in a row. That was last Sunday on the eve of Remembrance Day, which makes it even further gross. And I went over to ask these cultish Jews, there were 4 of them, why they were on the Hamas side. And the Hamas mob lost their marbles. I think the underlying strategy was, no, how dare you question our useful idiots? And then they went to the cops and said, arrest them. And you know what the cops did? They arrested me. And there's the footage right there. You can see me being handcuffed. There was a surreal sidebar story there. They couldn't get the handcuffs off. They had to call the fire department. And you know what? I'll tell you, Sheila, I still have a major cut in my wrist from the blister that popped. That's really, you're really playing with fire, handcuffing someone behind their back, cramming them into a confined area of a police cruiser. And like I said, the fire department had to be called in to literally use diamond drills to get those cuffs off. So thank you, Toronto Fire Services. But fast forward to yesterday. Thank God we have the kind of boss that says, you tell us not to do something that we're entitled to do. Guess what? We don't bend the knee. We double down, triple down, quadruple down, quintuple down. Is it sextuple? Is that the next one? Anyways, you know what I'm getting at. And it was all hands on deck. There's a great group shot. I see Isaac and Efren, Yankee. We got Lincoln, Sid, the big boss man himself, Mariah, Drea. Let's see. Did I say? Isaac and Etan and Avery Armstrong and Tamara Ugolini. Some of the people I referred to with both names, folks. I don't know why. Alliteration, maybe. And as you can see, we showed up en masse and we were told it's an incredible story. And by the way, the only reason Sheila wasn't along for the party is it wasn't because we were snubbing her. We were too cheap to fly her out from Edmonton. It was the fact that we needed somebody on mission control, right?
Yeah,
we needed someone.
A grown-up on the outside because all the other grown-ups were there. Ezra was there, Eitan was there, so we needed somebody in the senior management position in case the entire company was arrested.
100%. It's just like a space mission. You don't put everybody in the space program on the rocket ship.
Right.
You got to have somebody down in
Elon's
Houston.
not on the rocket ship. Elon's not in the spaceship.
So, and thankfully, I'm pleased to report we didn't need Sheila's help, although I very much thought we would, because the police in no uncertain terms, they warned us, you cross the street, you go from the west side of Bathurst to the east side, all of you are going to be placed under arrest, which is kind of unusual. I mean, what are they going to do? Call in the bus that serves as a prisoner transport when you have riots? Because I think there might have been, 12 or 13 of us at some point, Sheila. Well, you know what? With the full expectation that I was going to get arrested, I crossed over. We called the cops bluff. They did not arrest anyone. And I can say, I believe Ezra said to everybody, look, I can't tell you to do something that will end up with you being criminally charged. So if you don't want to cross, you don't want to cross. You know what? The kind of team we have at Rebel News, folks, everybody crossed. It was the ultimate Rebel News I'm Spartacus moment. Mm-hmm. And it paid off. And Ezra, there he is. He was so magnificent in the field, basically schooling the cops on the criminal code of Canada. Yeah, you know what? You might think if you're in law enforcement, you should know that. But as we've seen before, I want to get to your opinion, Sheila. I will wrap it up with this. I think yesterday, the Toronto Police Service did the right thing for the wrong reason, which is to say, what happened last Sunday, if you go online, the cops were roasted like a pig on a barbecue. There were thousands and thousands of comments. I don't think I saw a single solitary one going, that's how you do law enforcement. Arrest independent journalists and turn a blind eye to people chanting genocide and displaying the swastika. And I think the police probably phoned their superiors, maybe even Chief Demke, Sheila, and said, what are we going to do? They are threatening to cross the street, even though we threaten them with disturbing the peace. And I think they were told, stand down, not because they respect freedom of the press and freedom of expression. It was because we don't want on a second consecutive Sunday to get another glaring PR black eye. I think that's what moved the narrative on yesterday. Sheila, your thoughts?
I agree. God, who knew Ezra had such a big head? I've never thought of his head as big. But that hat looks like a doll's hat on his head. And I mean, something, you got to keep that big brain inside of something. But yeah, he's got a real big pumpkin on him. I had no idea. But
Good fumble
I think
recovery, by the way, Sheila. Didn't know he had
no,
a big head. Oh, that's my boss.
I do.
It's about all those brains he has to contain.
No, I bullied him into getting new shoes one time, so I get away with a lot. But I think you're right. I think it was strictly for optics. And as some of the clips that we have from, especially from our female journalists who were there to support you, you can see how the optics would have played out for the cops because they were already starting to play out poorly. We've got Drea's clip. Yeah, we've got Drea's clip here. If you want to go to that one, Efron Olivia, where she has the police cautioning her and the rest of the rebel team that they face arrest if they cross the street. So this is what David was talking about. Well, Drea's got it there.
Guys have been instructed to arrest us as journalists with our journalist ID, asking questions of the pro-Hamas side. They will arrest us. Now, that's not going to stop me because we're going to turn lemons into lemonade. We're going to turn this into a teachable moment. What's your name, by the way? I just don't see your name on your badge. Officer Grondin. Okay, we got that. What's your name again? Officer Ibrahim Grondin, Collin, and Fripp. So these
charge
guys
money
have
for this
been
clinic.
instructed with the rest of them. You can see they're swarming Rebel News. They're not swarming the pro-Hamas thugs. They're deploying a whole bunch of them. Look at that. You got this, guys?
That's right. There's Mr. Anus. He's the guy that showed up at 32 Division when I was being released. Wow. And he spent at least a half hour there. I don't know, is he an informant? Is he the guy instructing the police? Also, why is that fellow in the skirt? What is his role? Why did he go to 32 Division last week?
All right.
Oh. Anyways, I think that's good. There's more. The full video will be out, I believe, later on today. We've got another clip that I want to show. But David, explain what happened there, because you pointed out somebody who just seems to be a civilian who is instructing police last week when you were arrested, and he showed up again.
His name, and I'm not making this up, folks, is Anus, and he is one of the pro-Palestinian or pro-Hamas ringleaders. And the surreal epilogue to last Sunday is that when I was finally released, and I met up with Isaac and cameraman Lincoln J, and I was doing sort of an ending to the day in front of 32 Division, and who should show up? And I'm not making this up either, folks, in a rented cargo van, much like the one driven by Alec Manassian, who carried out the Yonge Street Massacre, which is exactly where 32 Division is located. And out pumps Anus, looking like the Cheshire Cat, and mocking my arrest, calling me a racist. And I said to him, I said, well, you know, I'm not criminally charged. It was I was just being held for breach of peace, which in and of itself is outrageous. Please tell me anything in my life I've said that's racist. And third, what the hell are you doing here? I mean, are you turning yourself in under Section 319 of the Criminal Code in chanting genocide? And no, he wouldn't answer my questions, and he went into the division. And we waited a good 20, 25 minutes, but we figured, A, we have enough for what we need. And secondly, really, what is he doing behind closed doors? I mean, Sheila, I want you to look into your crystal ball to become a clairvoyant. What is this guy? He not only assaulted me in front of the cops, he was the tattletale that said, arrest them. They complied. How does he have this pull? And when I saw him crossing the street, I mentioned to them, that's the guy that assaulted me. And you saw, was that the most cowardly response for that big hulking cop just to turn his back on me? How shameful.
It's embarrassing. This is an embarrassment to the good officers out there that these guys are wearing the same uniform as the rest of them. Just grosses me out. Many of you know I have police officers in my own family, and they put on their uniform to defend the rights of the civilian and to make our communities safer. They kiss their wives goodbye and they head out into the world, and they work really hard. They're the same people you will find at your own local gun range. They believe in many of the same things we do. They hate the catch and release policies. And the worst part is they get painted with the same brush as these yahoos in Toronto, and the ones who joked about their jackboots on the Freedom Convoy. And it's a disgrace. It's a disgrace that they hide behind the good reputations of the good cops to do the bad things. But what do we expect out of Toronto?
Yeah.
Mayor Olivia Chow is rocking out with her, well, I was going to say something gross there, but she was scantily clad once again at the Taylor Swift concert while the Hamas thugs take over her city. And, you know, just up the road in Mississauga, Hamassasaga, Carolyn Parrish, wondering, maybe with the benefit of hindsight, Yahya Sinwar could be just a Nelson Mandela figure. So if this is the leadership of the cities, is it really so far a reach to think that, you know, the police think that they can get away with stuff like this?
You know, Sheila, good point. And you forgot another key player, Prime Minister Trudeau, who earlier this year had a confidential meeting with Toronto Police Service Chief Myron Demke. Why? The chief is not answerable to the Prime Minister. I mean, it was completely inappropriate. We don't know what was said. I can guess. I don't have any.
No, it was a recruitment meeting. If I had to guess, it was a recruitment meeting because, as I say it every time we bring up Myron Demke, he wants to be the next Bill Blair. And I don't know. I don't even think Bill Blair wants to be Bill Blair, but he wants to be the next Bill Blair, the police chief that became the public safety minister.
No, and Sheila, I think it was more than that. I think, and again, I have no proof, folks, it's conjecture. I think Trudeau said to Demke, look, in about a year, we have a federal election coming up. We've crunched the number. It's strictly business, baby. Yeah. There are 5 times as many Muslims as there are Jews in Canada. And by the way, as an asterisk here, I'm not saying all Muslims in Canada support the garbage that we're seeing. In fact, I know Muslim Persians, most of them stand with the Jewish community. Our good friend Salma Sima is an example. So I think Trudeau probably said, so you know what? Yeah, they're chanting genocide. They're displaying swastikas. Turn a blind eye and a deaf ear. And oh, by the way, if you don't mind, if there are any peaceful counter demonstrators making a nuisance of themselves, if there's any pesky, non-controlled, non-state funded media people asking impolite questions, throw the book at them. I really believe that, Sheila. And to further your point, and I got criticism for this, I too back the blue. You have to back the blue. Without law enforcement, what do we have? Chaos. We have the law of the jungle. But what we are seeing is the politicization of the police. Yes. One quick anecdote. Our good friend Joe Wormington of the Toronto Sun, Sheila, he mentioned to me an anecdote he heard from the late, great Sun columnist Bob McDonald. And he told Joe, do you know, back in my day, and we're going back decades ago, there was only one time the police chief showed up at City Hall, and that was budget day. And it was all about, you know, what the force was going to get in terms of an annual operating budget. Sheila, I can tell you right now, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is every city in Canada, the police chief is at every city council meeting. Why? What are you doing there? I mean, half the time they're just discussing bike lanes, for goodness sakes, but that is the difference. The police chief, I think today, is less about law enforcement and more about being a political animal.
Yeah, he's a politician. Like, imagine how it feels to be a beat cop in Toronto, just doing your work, trying to keep your community safe, dealing with Justin Trudeau's explosion of crime across the country. The city's giving out drugs all over the place, homeless encampments they won't deal with. And your boss, the police chief, sides with the defund the police movement. Imagine. No wonder morale stinks in policing.
You know, that, Sheila, that is a very profound point you've made, because we see an unholy alliance today with the Islamists and the Marxists. And basically, they both have the same goal: tear down society as we know it. And of course, the Marxists are all about defund the police. You're absolutely right. And by the way, Sheila, I forgot to mention yesterday on social media, days before the event, and I think that's why there was even more law enforcement as per usual. The communists coming out of York University were going to come down and show their solidarity with the Islamists. Not a single commie showed up. Why? Well, folks, when you have to get up at the crack of noon on a Sunday, that's way too much to ask for a lazy ass commie. So there were zero commies there. And I will also report that in terms of the Hamas contingent, it was much smaller than usual. There were more cops on the Hamas side than there were Hamas protesters. I think that's a good sign. And I think as the weeks go on, and Sheila, there's no reason to cover this anymore as far as I'm concerned. It's just one group across the street yelling at another group. And I think the numbers, as Mother Nature wields her wrath and it gets colder and colder and colder, it's just going to evaporate. And that's good. But look at that. That's
gorgeous. That's top tier trolling.
Oh,
that's top tier. It's gorgeous.
And one other point too. I want to thank my colleagues for standing in solidarity with me, Sheila. And of course, our boss, who has the heart of a lion, and all the people on the pro-Israel side who even made homemade signs, stand with David. My boss from the early 80s, when I worked at a now defunct restaurant called Mickey's Ribs, Nisa showed up, stuck $200 in Ezra's palm, right? Like, I haven't seen her in decades, but that was the motivation for her. Another lady came up to me, Sheila. She gave me this beautiful thank you card. It was from her and her mother. Faith and Sherry also made a donation. And I don't have time to read the card. And besides, I don't have my reading glasses, and the writing, although beautiful, is too small for me to read. It was absolutely gorgeous. So thank you, ladies. I guess the point I'm getting at, Sheila, despite the criticism we get from the mainstream media and the shunning and all the rest of it, tell me when did Tom Clark or Rosemary Barton have some Canadian with their own money, not government money, walk up to them and say, I want you to have this. I believe in what you're doing. You're standing up for our rights, our freedoms.
Yeah, it's, I mean, they can be with the political establishment, but I'd much rather be with the people.
Me too.
And we tend to be, it's funny, your little anecdote about the communists. Those communists become capitalists real quick once they are like, where's my paycheck for attending the protests? We've got just one more clip I want to show, because this is what happens as the bad cops stand by in Toronto. So this is what I was talking about how the optics started to go bad, even though they didn't arrest everybody because of optics. But this looks real bad on the police. There's an army of police, and Rebel News female journalists are being intimidated by grown men and masked agitators. This is Tamara Ugolini's video.
What are you guys doing over here?
Excuse me, I'm trying to get by, man. You're in my way.
I'm not in your way. You can walk around me. You can walk around me.
You're in my
You
way.
can walk around me.
You're in my way,
You
man.
can walk around me. Walk around me. Walk around me. I'm not in anyone's way. Walk around me. Keep going. Keep going.
So where's the mainstream media? Every time they get a mean tweet, they have to have a panel about the treatment of female journalists, and Tamara Ugolini is being intimidated on the street.
Excellent point, Sheila. Well, I'll tell you where the mainstream media was that day. Evidently, a crowd chanting genocide and displaying swastikas, nothing to see here. They were down at Sky Dome chronicling the latest bowel movement of Taylor Swift, for God's sakes. That's where they are. They're all about bread and circuses. They're not covering this. Why? Because it shows you the failure of multiculturalism, Sheila. And that's a no-go zone when it comes to their sugar daddy, Justin Trudeau. It used to be, once upon a time, the deal was, the unspoken deal of multiculturalism: come from wherever, pursue the Canadian dream, take advantage of our social programs ranging from free healthcare to welfare. All we ask, you behave yourself. Don't break the law. Don't import age-old hatreds. And what do we see now for the last 13 months? We have seen an abject failure of multiculturalism. We see people that don't wave the Canadian flag. We see people that even on the eve of Remembrance Day aren't wearing a poppy. We see people co-opting the poppy and the slogan, "Lest we forget," for a grotesque event that may or may not occur a week Tuesday in Mississauga's Celebration Square. That is a scathing indictment of the failure of state-sponsored multiculturalism. And I hope, and remember, that was something that was enacted back in 1971 when Justin's alleged father, Pierre Trudeau, came up with this. I hope Pierre Poilievre puts that document in the paper shredder. We can't do this. We can't import silos of people full of hatred. And we even see in other parts, Sheila, Khalistani Sikhs versus Hindus, for goodness sake. It's not just the pro-Hamas people, but it's been a failure. We need to be a melting pot. We need to be Canada first. And by the way, if you are chanting genocide and you're not a Canadian citizen, get on a plane and get the hell out of Dodge. We don't need trash like that. That's right. I said it. Garbage. That's what you are if you come to Canada and you're breaking the law and advocating for genocide, and you're not even a Canadian citizen yet. And we see that every week, Sheila.
Yeah, I just going back to that video of that gross old dude trying to intimidate Tamara Ugolini. Excuse me, Tamara Ugolini has like a full hockey line of kids. Some of them are boys. You're not going to bully her. Yeah. Those little kids will pack up on her and eat her alive if she doesn't know how to control a situation. So she's not going to be bullied by some old, decrepit male feminist. Like, there's no misogynist out there like a progressive liberal feminist, is there? But I should tell everybody how they can follow along with our coverage as it happened over the weekend. They can go to standwithdavid.com. We had a sort of like a live blog of as it happened. If you want to update yourself before the big video comes out to later on. And if you want to support David, as of course we are going to sue those bad cops into the dirt, you can go to standwithdavid.com and show your support for David Menzies.
Thank you.
Now, I know we've got a quick ad read, and then we've got an ad break, and then we've got to get into the rest of the show. So I want to talk about the things that people are afraid to say out loud. Who is in control of America's nukes? Isn't that frightening? A couple more months. Joe Biden's in charge. Sure. But it's definitely not Biden in charge of the nukes. I don't know who is, and that's scary. Meanwhile, we have Russian ships off the coast of Florida and full-blown wars in Ukraine and Israel. The world is at its most unstable point since World War II, and with nuclear weapons. The stakes are 10 times higher. How do people like you and I stay safe? Every prepper, and you know I'm one, needs to have RadioGuard ACE, the only FDA-approved drug to treat radioactive fallout. Only the feds had it until now. That's why Rumble partnered with 5G Free, the only company in the world that has a supply of RadioGuard ACE and the ability to prescribe it prophylactically. Get their radiation emergency kit with RadioGuard ACE, potassium iodide, Zofran, and a Geiger counter. There's simply no other tool in your arsenal to protect against a radioactive threat. Go to 5gfree.com, code studio, and save 15% and get your radiation kit now. Again, that's 5gfree.com. All right, let's hit a quick Rebel News ad break, and then we'll circle back here, as they say in the White House, and get on to the rest of the show.
What if governments are trying to reinvent the wheel when the greatest teacher of all times has already laid out the perfect blueprint for a constitution for a kingdom of love, faith, and freedom? Introducing the Kingdom of Heaven Freedom Passport. This special edition Freedom Passport captures the foundational truths of love, ethics, and freedom for all. It's a powerful reminder of Jesus's call to love one another and to be part of something bigger that you can carry with you every day. Join the movement, share the truth, and spread the love with your family and friends. Get your Kingdom of Heaven Freedom Passport at freedompassport.ca. And right now, all orders in North America come with free shipping and a free downloadable song with every purchase.
Quality of life matters. Affording groceries and the basics matters. Ottawa has a different agenda. Their energy production cap will cut your family's budget, which means less money in your wallet. We say let common sense prevail. Tell the feds at scrapthecap.ca.
I'm in Brazil, so I'm using a VPN to get on the internet. What's a VPN? It stands for a virtual private network, and you get around these government firewalls. Suddenly, the president of Brazil banned his whole country from going on Twitter. It was a political censorship news. I've downloaded the VPN from a company called PIA VPN. We've teamed up with them at Rebel, and it's a great deal. I got on the internet really quickly, safely, and even I'm a bit of a technophobe. I managed to figure it out with 2 clicks. And here's the great news. If you go to piavpn.com/rebel news, not only do you get a big discount, but they pay us a bit of a commission too. Everyone's a winner. Your freedom, your VPN, and a little bit of cash coming to support Rebel News. I'm using it myself to get around the censors in Brazil. You can use it too. That's piavpn.com/rebel news.
You know, Sheila, I'm not surprised, but I always get a chuckle out of you being a prepper. Do you buy those Jim Baker food buckets too?
I'm not buying a food bucket from Jim Baker. My food buckets are prepared by me. Why do I need some failed televangelist to sell me rice? I can do that on my own. Make me
Sheila,
beef jerky. Again, I could do that myself.
For those out there who are asking, who after a decade of ineptitude and scandal and bad governance would still vote for the Justin Trudeau Liberals? Well, there's your answer. The idea that Jim Baker, thoroughly disgraced televangelist, still has a flock, still on the air, has a brand new Tammy Faye Baker, and people are still donating and buying his rubbish. That tells you why there is the low denomination voter. Even though the Liberals will be obliterated, there will be some support. That's the answer, I think, Sheila. And speaking of blackface,
the problem is, I believe in redemption, right? And so many people do. But it's very clear that Jim Baker just used the COVID pandemic to reinvent himself as somebody relevant, which so many people on the left and the right did. Right? Yep. Like we saw people deciding that they were something called a COVID actuary and inventing these careers for themselves. And some people were like, I have the cure for COVID. It's colloidal silver. And my name is Jim Baker. And so like there's a lot of that happening. But he preys on the best parts of Christianity in that we believe that all people are redeemable, unlike the cancel culture left.
Well, Sheila, I too believe in second chances, except for the ultimate sin, murder. I'm a big, staunch supporter of the death penalty. But with Jim Baker, the point I'm getting at, give him a second chance. But this guy was a financial grifter. This guy was involved in a sex scandal. And what I'm getting at,
we're
with
back
all
at it
that
again.
baggage, you still have the chutzpah to get in front of a camera and portray yourself as a devout Christian. I don't know. I think he shares that with Justin Trudeau. A psychopathic streak.
I'm all for a good Saul to Paul moment.
Yeah.
But he's just done like Saul to Saul. To Saul to Saul. Like he just didn't, there's nothing in the middle there. Anyways, we should get on to Justin Trudeau because Justin Trudeau apparently has had a Saul to Paul moment where now it is no longer racist to consider revamping the immigration levels. When I can remember like 30 seconds ago, Justin Trudeau was like the first guy to call you racist. If you're like, I don't know if we can absorb all these people, then you were a total racist. But now Justin Trudeau can see which way the electoral winds are blowing, and they are blowing him out to sea, never to be seen again. He's like, now it's perfectly reasonable to want to rejig our immigration levels.
Yeah.
It would be a clever comment from someone who didn't break the immigration system with one tweet.
Yeah, so Blackface is admitting it was a mistake, but it's not his fault though. No, I'm not to blame. It's other people. Anyways, let's roll the video, Sheila, and see Trudeau in his own words.
Immigration. Let's talk about it. In the last 2 years, our population has grown really fast, like baby boom fast. Increasingly, bad actors like fake colleges and big chain corporations have been exploiting our immigration system for their own interests. So we're doing something major. We're reducing the numbers of immigrants that will come to Canada for the next 3 years. Today, I'm going to let you in on what happened, where we made some mistakes, and why we're taking this big turn.
How about this to further enhance the reduction, Sheila? Deportation, like Donald Trump is going to do. Call in the army and get out the illegal people, the people that are breaking the laws without even being citizens. There's an express line to get the immigration numbers down, and you're targeting the right immigrants, the wrong immigrants to Canada.
Yeah, I bet you in his like big explanation of what went wrong and what we're going to do to fix it, he doesn't say, I sent a tweet like an idiot in 2017 to troll the president of the United States, who was cracking down on immigration problems, as Justin Trudeau is doing right now, and collapsed our immigration system by inviting the huddled masses of the world to just waltz into our country unvetted and unconstrained. So I bet you he doesn't say anything about this 2017 Welcome to Canada tweet.
Yeah.
Because people took it seriously. Like they're like, right on, off we go. And now the people who followed his advice are just loose in our country.
Yeah.
And it'll be years before they even get an immigration review board hearing.
100%. And don't forget, when you make the ultimate sin, which I say is unforgivable, first-degree murder, let's look at our own homegrown Al-Qaeda terrorist, shall we? Omar Khadr, 10.5 million of your tax dollars for compensation. For what? Hurt feelings? Are you kidding me?
It was for sleepless nights. I read the ruling.
Yeah.
It wasn't even a ruling. It was a settlement. He didn't even bother to take it to trial. I mean, to fight the veterans in court for years and years and years and years. Every trucker who ever looked at him wrong and honked too loud is being prosecuted until they get thrown out for taking too long in court. But it was not worth the trouble to fight Omar Khadr in court. He got $10.5 million and bought a strip mall in North Edmonton.
And, Sheila, I think really what we have to do with all our international airports in Canada, we have to have a new welcome sign. Welcome to Canada, penalizing the makers, rewarding the takers. Have a nice day.
Now, Justin Trudeau says that people from all over the world, I want to know what people, give me names right now. I want names of the dumbest people on the face of the earth. He says that people from all over the world are coming to Canada for advice from Trudeau on how to deal with Donald Trump. Look at him standing beside the little foreign interference lady, Mary Ng.
What an unfortunate screen capture that is for Mary Ng, Sheila. There's something there that's really getting my spidey senses tingling.
Trudeau farted. Look at her. Look like she's smelling something bad. But tell me, Trudeau, that you're not giving these people advice to tweet welcome to country X, because you just gave them advice to collapse their immigration system. Like Trump makes fun of him, snubs him at all international meetings, joked that his dad was Fidel Castro publicly, like just does not take him seriously.
Is it a joke?
You know what? Steal a paper straw from Justin Trudeau next time he throws out his Starbucks, and we'll have a DNA test. But does he really think that after everything we know about how President Trump feels about the Canadian administration right now, and Chrystia Freeland and Justin Trudeau's patronage or his paternity, does he wants us to believe the rest of the world is like, Justin, tell us, help us, tell us. Anyways, let's watch this. And Mary Ing having a sniff of something.
Question for the three of you at the podium. I was wondering about countries turning to Canada for advice on how to navigate a second Trump presidency. Who's asking us?
I think they're generalized conversations. People know that Canada has had a certain amount of experience dealing with various American administrations, and specifically our government navigated in a win-win way through the first Trump presidency. People are sharing notes, asking for advice, and we're happy to talk about our approach that is grounded in demonstrating that middle classes in both of our countries can do well when we work together.
Sheila,
he didn't name anybody.
No,
said,
he didn't
who's
name
asking
anyone.
us?
But I'm calling BS on steroids. Going to Trudeau for political advice, social economic policy advice, isn't that kind of like consulting the captain of the Titanic regarding iceberg navigation? I mean, are you kidding me? Who would want that guy's advice? This is, Sheila, I'm not being funny here. I'm not being mean. If Justin Trudeau, since the day he took office, flipped a coin and made his decision based on the coin toss, kind of like Harvey Dent, Two-Face in the Batman comics, this country would be much better off him only screwing up half the time. Instead, it's a 100% screw up. I mean, and the only thing I can ever get from his supporters when you ask them their greatest accomplishment is the legalization of pot, which for a lot of people is not an accomplishment. What else is there? Who's coming to him for advice, Sheila?
Nobody. That's why he couldn't say. The journalist actually asked, like, who is asking us? People. Generalized conversations. I would have pushed back and said, names, please. Yeah. Who people, please. Give me a vague country. Give me a continent from which these people are coming from. But we know how Donald Trump feels about Trudeau. I mean, he's appointed a very anti-Trudeau cabinet. Tulsi Gabbard has criticized him. RFK has. Matt Gaetz has. So, I mean, a lot of Trump's cabinet thinks that Trudeau is an absolute joke. And as Canadians, I think we're in for a tough go for about the next year, maybe a little less, until we have a change in administration here. Mike Waltz also made fun of Trudeau, particularly on issues related to China, as Trudeau gives a press conference standing beside Mary Ing, who is implicated in foreign interference. Wow. Like, it's just, they've criticized him on not spending enough at NATO. Like, no one is going to take Justin Trudeau's advice on dealing with Trump. And that is just absolute craziness that he even thought that was a believable thing to say in public.
And on the flip side of Canadian politics, we have Pierre Poilievre, most likely the prime minister after the next election with, if you believe the polls, and I do, in this case, having a majority conservative government. Let's see what Mr. Poilievre has to say when he assesses 9 years of Justin Trudeau. And of course, former immigration minister Sean Fraser losing track of, a few people. Would you believe 1 million people? Oh yeah.
That
check
seems
it out.
low.
Let's not turn our gaze away from the source of the problem, which is Justin Trudeau, who increased our population growth by 300% in a matter of a couple of years, who, by his admission, this isn't me, allowed massive fraud in international students, temporary foreign workers, and the refugee system. By his own admission, the liberal immigration policies have caused massive housing, job, and healthcare shortages. And now he's basically denouncing his entire immigration policy and expecting us to believe that he can fix the problems that he caused. This rampant incompetence has caused human misery, both for newcomers and for multi-generational Canadians like you and I. The bottom line is we have to fix our immigration, get back to the best system in the world, the one that brought my wife here as a refugee legally and lawfully, the one that brought so many people here to pursue the Canadian promise. Let's not.
You know, Sheila, isn't it amazing, as we discussed briefly earlier, it was about 3 months ago, Poilievre made pronouncements on cutting immigration levels, and he was branded as a racist and a xenophobe by the Trudeau Liberals. And then, you know what, we're going to do it. Yeah, never mind what we said back then. He's still a racist and a xenophobe, but we're going to do it. And as for that 1 million, Sheila, think about this. You know, the Taylor Swift concerts at Skydome, they're packing in 50,000 people into that building. 1 million people is 20 jam-packed Skydomes. That's the equivalent of people we've lost track of.
That's an entire Edmonton.
Yeah.
That we've lost track of. Edmonton and the surrounding areas. That they're just loose in the country. I say it over and over again, but it remains true. Trudeau on this issue is like an arsonist showing up with a bucket of water to put out the fire that he started and then wanting you to pat him on the back and give him a reward for it. He did this. He broke the system. He called everybody who said we should do something different, he called everybody who said that the system was broken, a racist, a bigot, a xenophobe. And now he's saying, you know, guys, I don't want to scare you, but I think there's a problem here. And I think maybe we should fix it. I mean, it's absolutely insane that he thinks Canadians are stupid enough to buy it.
And you know, Sheila, it's funny you make that analogy because very often arsonists do show up to watch the fire after they've changed their clothing, which is why law enforcement always makes note of who's who in the spectators gallery. Same, if you can believe it, tragically, murderers of children, especially showing up to the funeral. Yeah. And, you know, so, yeah, I don't know why I'm going down that tangerine, but he is an arsonist. Too bad it's not just a house going up in flames, but an entire nation. Oh, does Poilievre have his work cut out for him?
I don't think things are going to get better for the first two. You know what? I think things will get better just because we'll have a much better relationship with the United States.
Yep.
And they'll be booming, we'll be booming. Alberta will be unleashed, unchained from the federal government. And that's good for the entire country. But I think to see like real economic recovery in this country, it's going to take years. And I think it's going to take years for us to even get to the bottom of the corruption. Because every day we touch on a little bit, including the ever-evolving Randy Boissonneau's story.
Which Randy? Sorry, which Randy?
You know, I asked Grok, which is like Twitter's AI or X's AI, and I never got around to publishing it. I still need to tweak it. I asked it to make me an AI image of Randy Boissonneau gazing into a mirror where the reflections are endless. You know that, like mirror behind, like looking at a picture of yourself in a mirror, and then it was just like endless Randys, because now we've got another Randy. So we've had the other Randy who is running the company with Randy Boissonneau. Global Health Imports started a company with a very end stage humanity alien looking guy named Steven Anderson. And that company, Randy Boissonneau is implicated in running the company while being a sitting MP, while voting on policies that would enrich the company, i.e. lockdowns, and also simultaneously getting contracts from, I believe it was Elections Canada, to provide PPE. Now, then Global Health Imports has been involved in a series of fraud cases, taking money and deposits not delivering. And then Randy Boissonneau identified as Indigenous. And then now he says he wasn't Indigenous, but he was adopted into a Métis family. But he was also sitting in the Indigenous caucus of the Liberals. And the Liberals celebrated him as like, look at one of the Indigenous members of Parliament we elected out of Edmonton. Well, he's not Indigenous at all. And then he took advantage of the preferential contracting system in the federal government to get contracts because he was Indigenous. So he was riding the indigeneity wave on the gravy train with biscuit wheels. Now it gets even better. I love the Randy Boissonnault story just so dang much. And they keep stuffing Randy Boissonnault in our faces because in Alberta, Randy Boissonnault has failed upwards because despite all of the scandals involved with him and the fraud cases and the procurement cases and the pretendian stuff, the Liberals appointed him the minister in charge of Jasper Rebuild. So, well, anyway, now the cabinet minister's firm, that's Global Health Imports, that he started with the Alien Gray, shared a mailing address with a person named in cocaine busts. And there's a real crime in here, and I'll get to it in a second. So a company co-owned by Employment Minister Randy Boissonnault shared a post office box with a woman detained in 2 major drug busts. That's the medical supply company. They discovered this through corporate filings. It's a connection that could reveal security gaps in the federal government's vetting of cabinet picks. You think so? Mary Ng has not been demoted, and she was named as someone unwittingly, although I don't think Mary Ng is bright enough to be wittingly anything, involved in foreign interference. Anyways, vetting of cabinet picks, corporate ethics, and it raises new questions about the minister's judgment, you think, amid a recent series of troubling revelations. So the mailbox rented at an Edmonton UPS store appears in an April 2020 license for the Edmonton MP's former enterprise Global Health Imports. The mailbox is listed on a different company. So this is literally the same mailbox, not like the same place. It's the same physical mailbox, okay? The mailbox is also listed on a different company's registration document as the home address, and this is the real crime, the spelling of Francesca. The home address for Francesca LeBlond, a woman who has been named in run-ins with police since at least 2008, according to Alberta Court of Justice records. This is the worst. She's also used the name Francesca Kwach in the past.
As in Sasquatch?
Kwach. Francesca, which is just an absolute abomination of a spelling. She's rented the mailbox since 2013. Global Health Imports name is not on the rental agreement, so she's been retrieving the mail from there. Global Health Imports mail arrived in the inbox. And yeah, so, and people, he said that this is like the manager of the UPS store said, people occasionally turn up at the store in the Edmonton Strip Mall looking for Global Health Imports. I'm going to do that. I'm going to be like, I'm looking for Randy Boissonnault. Have you seen this man? And I'm going to go to the UPS store. Yeah.
You know, Sheila, you know what that reminds me of is that one of the secret Chinese police stations in the GTA operating out of a Scarborough variety store, like something out of Men in Black, as you once remarked.
Yeah, I should. I'm just curious now. I'm just curious. Like, where is like the epicenter of the next Randy Boissonnault scandal? What a piece of work that guy.
Yeah, but you know what, Sheila? I'm sure the mainstream media will be watchdogs on this. I'm sure they'll do their due diligence. I mean, kudos to the Post for exposing it. It's one of the few media outlets left with a scintilla of honor. But you know, if the roles were reversed, if this was a conservative government, it would be front page today and every day. And it's just despicable. This is just, it reeks of scandal.
How do you get kicked out of Justin Trudeau's cabinet? Like, how do you get kicked out at this point? Chrystia Freeland illegally used the Emergencies Act. She remains the deputy prime minister and the finance minister. We've got a housing crisis. We've got an inflation crisis, and yet she is still in charge of the company or the country's finances, even though she did like destroy an entire division of Reuters through her mismanagement. Justin Trudeau's like, you know, that's the lady we should put in charge. Randy Boissonnault remains a cabinet minister. Mary Ng turns up at press conferences with Justin Trudeau front and center. I think the only way you can get removed from cabinet is not being adequately sycophantic enough to dear leader. That's the only way you get booted.
Although, in fairness to blackface, Sheila, when it comes to Fraulein Freeland, he did try to manufacture a little palace coup. Remember getting Mark Carney to potentially come in until allegedly Carney went, "Are you crazy? I'm waiting for you guys to go down in flames. Then I'll be the rescuing knight of the Liberal Party of Canada." So I think if Trudeau had got his way, Freeland would have been the sacrificial lamb under the bus. But yet again, Trudeau screws up. There's your headline for 9 years of Justin Trudeau governance, folks.
I'm just really excited to have Freeland still around for a second Donald Trump presidency, so he can just put her through the ringer one more time. But didn't she say she like laid on Justin Trudeau's floor and cried after negotiating a trade
I've never
agreement
heard
with
that.
Trump?
Seriously? I never
Yeah, she
heard
said-
that.
Yeah, she said she was just like exhausted, and she like went to the prime minister's office to tell him about the deal that she made, and then she was just so exhausted that she cried. And I was like, what a disgrace you are for women.
All I remember about that time period, Sheila, she wore some kind of homemade shirt that her daughters created. I can't even remember what the slogan was on the t-shirt, but it was predictably ludicrous.
An emotional Freeland walks out of tears. Fights back tears as she tried to save a trade deal with the European Union. There's just so much. It's like, anyways, I'll dig it up. She cried after the collapse of the EU trade deal, but I just remember her like going into after negotiating the like North American deal, she collapsed out of emotional exhaustion. She just was. Anyways, what a
well, Sheila, it was the straw that broke the camel's back. Obviously, it was around that time Freeland had to cancel her Disney Plus subscription to give a fiscal example to Canadians on how to be, to practice restraint in a bad economy. By the way, I don't believe she canceled her Disney Plus subscription.
No, of course she didn't.
I bet that was another lie.
That's a deal she couldn't even negotiate with her kids. Okay, let's we've got a quick ad read, and then we've got Premier Smith being awesome that we should talk about. That's a perennial comment from me these days. Okay. This sponsorship is from our friends at Rumble, and it's one that's incredibly important to the survival of their company, but also ours. When Rumble first started in 2013, they built the platform for the small creator. They didn't censor or have biases. They were fair and treated all creators equally. No one thought the platforms would censor political conversations or censor opinions on COVID, but they did. Facebook admitted they felt pressure from the Biden and Harris administration. We saw the same thing in records here obtained through access to information that Facebook was actively censoring people on behalf of Health Canada. But Rumble didn't. They held the line. They're attacked daily for giving us a voice here at Rebel News to talk to you. They're attacked in corporate media. They're attacked by governments like France. They're attacked from brand advertisers who refuse to work with them. Corporate America is fighting to remove speech. Rumble's fighting to keep it, but Rumble won't survive with brand advertisers. They don't get much of it. Watching our show on Rumble is the most they can ask from you, but if you really believe in this fight, and if you have the means, one major way you can help Rumble survive is by joining Rumble Premium. It's really easy. Just cancel your YouTube Premium and move that over to Rumble. Join the community that believes in the First Amendment in the United States and believes in our human right to free speech. Rumble is offering $10 off with the promo code STUDIO when you purchase an annual subscription. Go to rumble.com/premium. Use the code STUDIO. Like I said, if you have the means and believe in the cause, now's the time to join Rumble Premium. But if you don't have the means, and I completely understand, we're just happy if you watch us here on Rumble. Okay, so let's go into here in Alberta. We are not waiting for Pierre Poilievre for a year from now to become prime minister to help reignite a good relationship with the United States. We're not letting Trudeau take the charge on this. Our Premier Smith is going to President Trump's inauguration. We used to have, I don't know if we have him anymore. I remember the NDP fired him. We used to have a special envoy who just was in Ottawa, and all he did was in Washington, and all he did was work to advance Alberta's interests. It was Rob Merrifield. And when Notley was elected, she fired him, like as her first thing of business was like, no, Rob Merrifield, you're fired. So, and I was like, so I guess you don't want Keystone XL. Okay. But Premier Smith has joined the United States Energy Coalition to secure North America's energy future. So she's the first first non-US state to join the United States Energy Pact, featuring 12 states that have already signed to the coalition. So she made the announcement Thursday. She thanked Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry and New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu for inviting her, along with President-elect Donald Trump. She thanked the other 10 governors involved. This is what Premier Smith said. With 200 billion barrels of recoverable oil, 200 trillion cubic feet of recoverable natural gas, and I'm sad that we didn't list our coal, significant natural gas liquids, and ample pore space for carbon capture, Alberta's contribution is set to grow even further as we look to work with the Trump administration and other U.S. partners to increase our pipeline capacity to our greatest friend and ally, the United States. We're proud to collaborate with this coalition of allied states in advancing energy security, reliability, and affordability for Americans and Canadians. So they've reignited conversations about the Keystone XL pipeline, which was approved, and then shelved. And as it stands, it makes perfect sense because Alberta amounts for 56% of oil imports to the United States, double Mexico, Saudi Arabia, and Iraq combined. So it makes sense that we're there. And I'm very happy that we're not letting Stephen Guilbeault take the lead on this.
Yeah. And, Sheila, it's a great strategy for Premier Smith to pursue. One of Trump's promises is energy independence, something he achieved in his first term. And Alberta Oil will help him get that way as they're getting energy independent. And it's energy coming not from an enemy state, not from a region that chants death to America, but a friendly Canadian province. Too bad the federal government doesn't see it that way, because there's some kind of other, forgive me, Sheila, I heard Daniel Smith interviewed earlier today. It's not a carbon tax, but it's some kind of other tax that the Trudeau Liberals want to put on the Alberta oil
emissions
industry.
Cap.
Pardon me?
It's emissions. It's an emissions cap.
That's it. In a sense, it's another carbon tax, really.
It's not just a carbon tax, it's a production cap.
Yeah.
It's a cap on jobs, it's a cap on our prosperity, it's a cap on affordability. If you put an emissions cap, that means you cannot drill past a certain point, which
Can you
means
imagine?
think National Energy Program 2.0.
Unbelievable.
Right? So we're having none of it. We're going to fight the feds in court. And there's a huge public relations campaign to remind the rest of Canada, you know how expensive gas is right now? It's about to get worse if the feds don't let us produce it for you.
And people wonder why, whether it's Alberta or Quebec, the separatist movements in both provinces are getting reignited.
Although I will tell you that since the election of Premier Smith, the separatist movement has sort of quieted down here in Alberta because she's giving them everything they want.
Yeah.
Anyway, while remaining in Canada, she's like, you want to fight with the feds? You got it. We're suing them over everything. You want a better, closer relationship with the United States? Guess what? We're doing that too. So you want control over firearms rights? We're doing it. You want control over immigration? Hang tight. We're going to get it done. You want property rights? We're doing that too. So all the things that made that separatist movement say, we're not culturally compatible with the rest of the country, she's saying, look, hold your horses. We're going to have our little firewall and we're going to flex our muscles within Confederation. So she's the best of both worlds.
You know what, Sheila, good point. Premier Smith as the premier in Alberta, Donald Trump taking over come January as president, and the only missing piece of the puzzle is regime change in Ottawa, which, like I said earlier, if you believe the polls, and I sure do, is inevitable in less than a year. So, yeah, that might extinguish any kind of independence movement, because you have a provincial, a federal government, and the government in the U.S. all on board in terms of promoting Alberta's interests. I can't wait.
Yeah, we would just want to be free of the federal government.
I know.
Telling us what to do and how to live, because we live differently out here, and she's helping us do that. So, and she's not scared of the media, independent media, but also the mainstream media. She's happy to take questions from us. She's got all kinds of time for independent media. And she's happy to kick around the mainstream media and the likes of Rosie Barton. Let's just go into this video with Rosie Barton and Daniel Smith, talking about the close relationship she's trying to build with our American friends as a pro oil and gas administration is coming into Washington. Like, it's just such a stupid thing for Rosie Barton to even question. Like, why? Like, if
it's
you
the climate crisis, Sheila. That's why.
Right, it's the climate crisis.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's just watch this. Our premier's so good.
Donald Trump has named now his energy secretary, Chris Wright. He's a fracking executive. Questions, I think, a little bit climate change. I think that's fair to say. What do you make of that appointment, and how do you plan to work with him? Because his goal is really to make sure that they can produce more energy within the United States.
Well, I would say the most important appointment is actually Doug Burgum, who is the Secretary of the Interior, as well as the Energy Czar. I think as the former governor of North Dakota, one of the things he's realized is that getting pipelines built requires coordination across multiple ministries, including especially on federal lands. And so the fact that they put Doug Burgum in charge of that portfolio, as well as I think some pretty strong energy advocates in the other portfolios that matter, I think that sends a very clear message that they understand, the Americans understand something that it seems that the federal government doesn't, is that if you have low cost energy for your consumers, that's going to be address the affordability issues, it'll address the inflation issues, it'll address the investment issues, it'll make everything less, it'll reduce costs, which will increase economic performance. That I think is what we should see about what the Americans are trying to achieve. And if we can help provide that, but also align our energy policy around that, it'll benefit both of our countries.
You know, Sheila, right off the hop, Rosemary Barton, in what has to be such a moronic, loaded question, when she's speaking of Chris Wright, the fracking CEO, quote, his goal is to produce more energy in the United States. Oh, no, not that. Let's have us dependent on, Middle East despots or Venezuela. I mean, that's crazy. How is that a bad thing in anyone's mind? Who's driven by common sense and is not some woke climate catastrophe nabob?
I just want to point out just how insufferably stupid Rosie Barton is on this topic. And I want everybody at home to realize that when you are watching the CBC, they are experts on nothing. And I don't claim to be an expert on this topic, but I have been around the oil and gas sector since before I was born. Okay, I'm a multi-generational oil patch family. And if you pay attention to this stuff, like she says fracking like it's a crazy thing. If fracking were dangerous, Alberta would be a hellhole instead of one of the most beautiful places. No, the most beautiful place on the face of the earth. We frack like crazy here. But she says, he denies climate change and he's a fracking CEO. Rosie, if you care about carbon emissions, and I don't, but the CBC tells me they do, then you should support fracking, because and you should support President Trump if you care about emissions lowering, because the last time around when there was a fracking renaissance under President Trump, guess what happened in the United States? Emissions fell. And everyone from Slate to the American Enterprise Institute to the Heartland Institute to places on the left all were forced to admit that the fracking boom in the United States caused energy to become cheaper and emissions to fall. So if you care about the environment and emissions, again, let me reiterate over and over again, I don't. But if you do, and big old Rosie says that she does, well, then you want the fracking guy in charge of the energy department.
Yeah, imagine that. Putting somebody in charge of energy who has a background in energy as opposed to activism, as opposed to, I don't know, climbing the CN tower illegally and getting on somebody's roof, being the environment minister to shut down the energy sector. It's unbelievable. Like I said, Sheila, I feel like, I know you're an SCTV fan. Remember that Ed Grimley, the boy who could not wait for Christmas? And it's Ed Grimley staying up all night. Like, this is insane, man. It's only 2 a.m. When is Christmas coming?
It's funny because I have my Edith Prickly glasses on too.
All you need is the leopard print shirt and you're in business.
Oh, I should do that. I could. Andrew Martin's so funny. Okay, we've got one more clip from Premier Smith, and then I think we have to wrap up the show because we're already a quarter after.
Yeah, wow.
Danielle Smith slams the Trudeau Liberals for chasing away tens of billions of investment. Again, this could be just an evergreen video for the next 12 months from her.
The first small modular reactor, as I understand it, is being rolled out in Darlington in 2026. And once you've established the framework for that, it should be fairly straightforward to be able to roll it out elsewhere. We've never had nuclear in our province, but when I talk to the officials about what it would take to get there, they're telling me the earliest is 2035. Look, I mean, we have to understand the reason why tens of billions of dollars have left our country is because of a federal regulatory process where there is no end in sight. We lost the Tech Frontier mine. We lost Energy East. We've lost multi-billion-dollar projects because the federal government has created such a convoluted process where there isn't a clear pathway to finishing. So I'm not going to hold out hope that all of a sudden they're going to see the light after 9 years and come up with a process that's going to allow this. If it's going to take the time, we need to give industry the time to be able to do it. And we simply are not going to agree to any kind of arbitrary emissions cap that we know will shut in our production. We're just not going to do it.
And I do understand.
Yeah, Sheila, that was the interview I was hearing on radio earlier today, and the host, Vashi Capellas, was going after the premier. But what if industry, isn't telling the truth? What if they're, overestimating the shortness of time they can get that technology in place? Excuse me? How many times has this government lied through its teeth? And look at the beleaguered consumer paying the price, and suddenly we have to worry about the energy industry not being transparent. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, but Premier Smith isn't wrong here. There's a reason why in Alberta we have energy shortages, even though we are rich with oil and natural gas and coal. We have energy and electricity shortages here. Why? Because they transitioned us off coal too early, thanks to Rachel Notley. But because they transitioned us off coal, but there was regulatory uncertainty and two levels of government, both provincially and federally, that were very clearly anti-fossil fuels. Guess what didn't happen? They didn't bring more natural gas capacity online. The companies were like, what are you talking about? We're not building anything there because we're going to start building it, and they're either going to yank the approvals or put on these extra restrictions and now emissions caps. So they didn't ramp up natural gas electricity here until there was regime change in Alberta. And so now we're paying the price. And the same thing is going to happen with this energy transition that Justin Trudeau wants. Who's going to build a reactor here? Who would build a reactor here when you've got Justin Trudeau in Ottawa? It's just not a thing. And so you're going to have energy shortages.
Wow. Well, Sheila, like you said, we are at the end of the road. I think we do have at least one super chat.
Two, actually.
Oh,
got
excellent.
One from our friend Ryerson Gary, regular supporter of the show. David Menzies, super fan, gives us $5. David, is it possible that the Detroit Lions may finally overcome the hex they put on themselves when they lost Tobin Rote to the Argos in 1960. David Menzies, you're the only person I know who might know anything about this.
Wow, Ryerson Gary, what an incredible connection of the two teams that I mentioned right off the hop. Well, when it comes to sports droughts, the Detroit Lions, that franchise is 91 years old. They've never won a Super Bowl. They've never even been to a Super Bowl. I think they're due, and they are 9-1. So I'm very hopeful. Oh, and by the way, anyone that thinks I jumped on the bandwagon, no. When my sons moved to Windsor, I said, guys, we got to start supporting Detroit teams. And the Lions were pretty sucky back then. So I'm just so enjoying this. But listen, 91-year drought, that makes the Leafs 57-year drought look like the breakfast of champions. So, and really, how can you not like the Lions? How can you not like the city of Detroit? The city that made the motors that put the world, behind the driver, the steering wheel, and, a city that's had such hard times of late. So it truly is the underdog Rocky City, and the Lions are the Rocky team. So I can't predict who's going to win, but looks good on paper. But then again, so did the 1970 Ford Pinto.
Yeah, the grandkids of the Leafs drought should be able to vote for Poilievre in the next election at 57 years, roughly. Yeah, would be 18. We've got one more Rumble rant. It's from Nana Awake, who says the radiation kit not available in Canada, not cool considering bumbling Biden is supposedly in charge of the codes. That and the nuclear warheads will pass right over Canada. The mutually assured destruction warheads would pass right over Canada.
I don't think you have to worry, Sheila. I think, Joe Biden is ragging the puck by being on a beach, making sandcastles. My sources tell me that he's figured out if he builds the sandcastle 18 feet away from the water line, it won't dissolve when the tide comes in. So he's very proud of himself that way.
But you know what? He looks like he found life again a little bit.
Wasn't he? That meeting last week between Trump and Biden about the transferring of power.
Smiling.
He looked exhilarated,
Yeah.
And Jill Biden, who evidently doesn't even look Kamala Harris in the eye, who is wearing a red dress on election night, totally symbolic. She is the biggest sore loser of all. I have never seen a woman that so loved being the first lady, the Rose Garden, flying around the world in Air Force One.
To the point that she would exploit her, obviously, in the throes of dementia husband.
Yeah.
So that she could still be the first lady. Yeah.
Talk about elder abuse, eh, Sheila?
Well, yeah, completely. I wonder if they tweaked his meds now, so that he's not as clearly Swiss cheese addled in his brain. I don't know. It's like he's just became able to walk, his gait got better. He's smiling. He's not wandering off places.
He looks good in that photo.
Yeah. I mean, they've got to leave his face alone a little bit. He looks like the Geico gecko a little bit because they've just yanked on his face and frozen it a little bit too much. But I mean, he looks like, at least momentarily coherent. I've never seen him look better, that he's untethered from the presidency.
Wow. Well, thank you very much for that super chat, as well as Ryerson Gary. And thank you all for tuning in. I had a blast. I had no idea we're 21 minutes over time,
right?
But as they say, what flies when you're having fun. Sheila and I will be back here on Friday. In the meantime, as always, folks, stay safe and stay sane.
The challenge we're facing right now is that the direct pressures on individuals and households, the affordability crisis, the being kicked in the teeth by inflation around the world over the past few years, the concerns around the rapid pace of change, the instabilities we're seeing, the shifting geopolitics, the disruptions of the supply chain, have a lot of individual citizens, voters, families really worried that they're not able to make ends meet. And it's really, really easy when you're in a short-term survive. I got to be able to pay the rent this month. I got to be able to buy groceries for my kids, to say, okay, let's put climate change as a slightly lower priority. And that's something that's instinctive. When the storm comes, you want to hunker down and just sort of huddle up and wait for it to blow over. We can't do that around climate change. And unfortunately, we have an awful lot of political amplification of the kind of narrative that is directly opposed to that. It's, you know, some very, very profitable oil and gas companies and entrenched interests that very much want people to, you know, put in opposition affordability and the fight against climate change. And that's really the challenge we have to take on. Everyone sort of understands, oh yes, we need to grow an economy and protect the environment at the same time. But when it comes to putting dollars in pockets for people, they don't want to hear about, oh, if they just, pay a little more for an electric car, then that'll be protecting the environment. They can't pay a little more for an electric car right now. There's a sense that affordability is in direct contrast with our moral responsibility to protect the planet. And that is something that unfortunately people have been amplified and used propaganda, misinformation, disinformation, and flat out lies to scare people into saying, oh, no, we got to take care of our household budget and bottom line first, and environment second. And that's one of the things that we've really tried to tackle in Canada, because ultimately, even as we talk about global collective action and responsibility, we have a first primary responsibility to citizens in our own countries, because if they're not on board with us stepping up to fight climate change, both at home and around the world, they will withdraw political support from parties that are focused on doing that. And that's the challenge we have to tackle.